first heard that the 8-man tournament was going ahead in early July, I think. I'd just come back from Orlando fighting in karate combat, and we had a couple of offers to fight, one locally in Adelaide, and then the guys at Fighters Express called us up and said, hey, would you be interested in fighting in this 8-man? The enticement really was the fact that there was this big grand prize of $25,000 cash to the winner. For me, it's never been about the money. It's always been about the status and bettering myself. And listen, winning an 8-man is a very, very, it's easy to say now in hindsight, but it's a very, very difficult thing to do. You know, it takes a lot of skill, technique, intelligence, heart, all of that sort of stuff. When I started out, I used to focus a lot on who I was fighting, and I'd spend time researching what they did and how they fought. And over the last few fights, especially the last probably 3 or 4, I haven't really paid that much attention to who I'm fighting. What I've tended to focus on is my own training, making sure I'm fit, making sure I'm ready, because I know that if given the opportunity, I can beat just about anyone in the world at 68 to 72 kilos in a stand-up fight. I firmly believe that. And so I went into this fight camp essentially with guys like the potential to fight guys like Tony, to fight guys like Brown Pinas, to fight, there was a guy in there called Muhammad Al Emir, who had a very storied career on Glory and things like that. There's every opportunity that or every chance that you're going to end up fighting one of these guys at some stage, and probably multiple of them as you progress through. But for me, it's like this. It's weird because this fight camp, I was actually saying to Britt, you know, just in the build up, like I have not lost a wink of sleep over this fight camp. Normally I'm visualizing at night, staying up, getting kind of nervous. And this whole fight camp was just routine. It was just, you know, job done every step of the way. And it almost got to the fight night and I hadn't even considered, you know, a lot of who I was fighting and so the nerves didn't build, the pressure didn't build. And I think where that came from was just having a good camp, like having a good corner, good coaches, good training partners, but ultimately knowing where my skills lie and knowing where my weaknesses are, and having worked on those weaknesses over the last 2 or 3 years since my last Glory fight, I'm so comfortable and assured now that if I get into the ring, I know that my skill, my intelligence, my work ethic will carry me through. So I trust that. It's like a faith that I have, you know, like it's like a religious thing. It's just a belief, a core belief that exists. The word camp obviously implies that you are going somewhere, you're staying somewhere unfamiliar or foreign. You've got a group of people around you and your sole focus is on what you're doing. And potentially that, you know, if you're going to fight internationally or something like that, you might do that. But I talk about a fight camp not as a physical change of location and change of stimulus, but more as a mental change where you kind of get into this almost hive mindset of it's almost obsessive compulsive of waking up 4 a.m., going to training. I then fill the rest of my day with work. I have a 9 to 5 full-time job, but as soon as I finish work, I leave work at work and I come back to training. Every sort of day is filled with this kind of routine that everything is focused on the fight, whether it's the diet, the exercise. You know, if I know I have to get up at 6 o'clock the next morning or 5 o'clock the next morning, I'll make sure I'm in bed by 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. So I'm getting the sleep. I'm making sure the first thing I do when I wake up in the morning is drink a liter of water. It's a ritual, you know, and you have to get into that mindset. It takes a little bit to get into that mindset. It's that change of attitude, change of focus and intention. There's no room for error when you go into fight camp. There's no room to cut slack. There's, you know, the alarms start getting set and the diet completely changes and the sleep changes and the amount of water you drink changes and everything changes, but it's all got that focus on trying to peak on the 21st of August for this show. Morning training on the Monday 6 week out is a lot of focus on skills, a lot of focus on just getting the fitness back and making sure that everything's on point. As the fight camp progresses, you start to pick the sparring up a little bit more. The intensity of the training should sort of pick up a little bit more as the nerves and the stress of that impending kind of doom starts coming towards you, And for example, my strength and conditioning team, they try and focus, so we know when's the fight. Okay, so the fight is on day X. We know a week before that I want to be deloading, and then so we want to everything tries to peak towards that 2 to 3 weeks out. So week 3 and 2 are the most intense. That's when you get the hard sparring. That's when you get the hard, heavy bag drills. You're just thrown in the shark tank, and then you start to taper off a little bit into fight week, which is the week immediately before. But as well as in that fight week, I drop back to 1 session a day, going from 2 or 3 sessions a day, dropping it back fully to 1 a day. Even though I feel like I could be doing something, it keeps you hungry and it keeps you sharp. When I first started, and most other people that take up combat sports will have this similar experience, so the sheer impact and trauma that you put your body through when you first start leads to injuries. And I experienced a significant amount of kind of soft tissue and other type injuries early on. So I had like compartment syndrome in my shins from excessive running, these overload injuries from running too much, skipping too much, just trying to do too much too often. And then I was having issues with my hands and my wrists from boxing early on, and the trauma all of a sudden went from my hand into my forearm, into my elbow, into my shoulder, and, progressed its way towards your back. And you have to kind of train through those injuries at the same time. But as you start to get older, training through injuries doesn't quite, especially if they're sort of serious injuries as well, ligaments potentially. So you have to start being smart about doing supplementary training and visiting, health professionals as well that can help you kind of manage and ultimately prevent the onset of any sort of, if you can delay, the severity or reduce the severity of any potential injury, that's super important because it allows you to continue training. You don't have to have significant time, layoffs. The ultimate goal for me, and I learned this a long time ago, was to focus on all ticking the boxes, getting 8 hours sleep minimum a night. I mean, if I miss, if I got 7 hours one night and 9 hours the next, that's okay. But I don't want to be sleeping 6 hours or 5 hours. People say things like, oh, well, I'm okay. I can function on 6 hours sleep. But, in the long run, that's not healthy. It doesn't, you need to be getting that 8 or 9 hours sleep. You also need to be drinking water. You need to be doing it. Like first thing I do when I wake up in the morning is drink a liter of water. After, it's the first thing. It's a ritual. It's a habit. But just being hydrated, starting the day off hydrated is just so crucial. Diet, making sure you're not eating high sugar type foods. If you have joint injuries, eating foods with a bit of fat, but we're talking about, fish oils and things like that. All of these things that I've learned over a long period of time, I use now. And I've noticed basically, and touch wood, I've had no significant injuries in my time. I've had the trauma from fights. Obviously, you're going to get that, but I've had no real significant injuries. And I put that down to, firstly, the lifestyle sort of factors, but also all the extracurricular stuff that I'm doing in terms of like strength and conditioning. So I've got a strength and conditioning coach or coaches. So we focus a lot on building strength and resilience in movement patterns that I would find myself in the fight, on one leg or, in an awkward kind of compromised position, especially a lot of like core rotational stuff. That's an easy place to get injuries in your hip flexors and in your glutes and stuff like that because you're not strong. And then you go into a fight and you throw a hard kick and you put something out. But also my Pilates as well. I've been going to Pilates now for 2 years or 3 years, I think, at Form Pilates and Bar. Excellent. It's clinical Pilates. So they do an assessment. They work out, okay, where are you weak or where do you need strength? And they work with you, It's like here's the other thing. You need to have coaches in those. It's no good just joining a Pilates gym or joining having a strength and conditioning coach if they know nothing about fighting. Everyone has to be on the same page, working towards the same goal. Everyone has to have for example, my strength and conditioning coaches, they always say, I'm not looking to make you, strength and conditioning won't make you a better fighter. Repetition in the gym, experience in the ring will make you a better fighter. But doing the things properly in the strength and conditioning gym will make you a better athlete and make you more able to train more often and less likely to get injury. And that will make you a better fighter. Same with Pilates, it's not going to make you it's not going to help you throw a jab or a right kick, but it'll make you a bit more flexible and make you a bit more, your stabilizer muscles able to deal with the stress you put it under these compromised positions. And that will make you a better fighter. So it's important to kind of understand all of that as well. And then obviously, if you do get injured, you need to have somewhere to go, someone to see that's able to deal with those injuries. And so I go to good physio, which is where Britt works. And we've had a long focus over the years where I now go every 2 or 3 weeks. I get massage and I get physio, just preventive stuff. Okay, where are you sore? Might get a bit of needling, might get a bit of, adjustments or whatever. But it's just keeping on top of the little things and making sure that I'm not overloading, not overusing. And that's kind of how I go about managing injuries. It's this kind of global approach where you have to have every single area covered. You can't neglect your sleep. You can't neglect your diet. You can't neglect your stress, your relationships, all of that sort of stuff. Everything has to work together.